What's the best way for Coach Hubert Davis to approach his starting five? Is it a guarantee that RJ Davis and Armando Bacot make the cut, or do they have to earn it just like everyone else?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Thursday, August 24th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and joining me back by popular demand is Coach Bill Robinson. We want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch every single day. Very seriously, folks, you asked for it in like droves after last week's show. Coach Bill Robinson is back with us, the head coach of Milligan University Buffaloes and a 20-year veteran coach at the UNC basketball camp. What's cool, Coach? And I talked about it after. He's down to be a regular contributor on the show, and that's super exciting. I know from your comments that you are looking forward to that too, folks. And in addition to sharing his wisdom as a coach and his specific insight into the Tar Heels, Coach Rob, as you'll recall from last week's show, is working on a book with all sorts of great Carolina stories in it. And so here's what we're going to do. At the end of each show that he's on, we're going to have what I'm calling story time with Coach Rob. So it's going to be a lot of fun. He's going to just share from his wealth of UNC history with us. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And if you missed last week's show when Coach was first on, make sure you check that out. I'm going to link it up there in the corner. All right. Coach, that's enough gushing over you. Let's get into talking about our concept today. And this actually comes from a listener question from Stanley Daniel on Twitter. And let me read what he says, and then we'll get into our conversation. He says, Isaac, here's my point of view. If Hubert Davis doesn't go into this season with the mindset that nobody has a starting position from the outset, including RJ Davis and Mondo, he will do a great disservice to this year's team. This is not the time for past loyalties. Carolina is coming off what Stanley calls an abysmal season where they missed the tournament. Therefore, all the old ideas of success are up for reevaluation. The one thing I admired about Coach K is he had the courage to play the best five players regardless of class. So we have to all stop with this ideal that we should know who should start, where, and when. Why? Because there has to be a new paradigm shift with UNC basketball. But I digress. Let me know what you think. And Stanley says, peace and hair grease with the little peace sign emoji. Stanley, thank you so much for sending this in. And I think this is a great conversation for us to have, Coach. So right off the bat, let me just ask it to you this way. Is Stanley on the right track with this line of thinking, or has he missed the mark? What do you think about that?
I think there's definitely two different philosophies when you're coaching.
Okay.
The philosophy of, hey, being uncomfortable makes you grow. So let's make everybody as uncomfortable as possible and make everybody earn it. The other philosophy would say, hey, everybody's got a bank, and you're daily depositing or withdrawing from that bank depending on, how you play or what you've done in the past. Obviously, freshmen would come in maybe with an empty bank. Where the upperclassmen would have a lot in their bank, and they're withdrawing if they do something poorly, if they do something good, they continually to deposit into that bank. With guys like Armando, who's going to take his spot? Who's going to take his playing time? I mean, honestly. So, I mean, he's fifth year. He's going to be with that fifth year going to be the all-time leading rebounder in history of the program. Who's going to really take his spot? So to sit there and say, hey, you got to earn it. He's going to look at you like, well, who's going to take my spot? A little different with RJ. Obviously, there's more guards and there's a lot of talent within the guards. But then it comes down to, a matter of leadership. One of the big problems Carolina had last year is they didn't have leadership. It was very obvious from the outside. We looking in, they just didn't have that pure leader. Man, it's got to be RJ, right? It's got to be the guy with the ball in his hands. It's hard to lead if you're not on the floor. So in my personal opinion, as a coach, I want those two guys to know, hey, this is your team. You're going to start. You're going to play a lot. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who starts and who doesn't start. It's who gets the minutes,
exactly.
Who gets the important minutes. So I don't care who starts, but yet there has to be some kind of leadership along that team, and you want those guys to lead by example as well as off the court. But starting is a big deal for those two guys. So I think it's in my case, and what I would do, I would let those two guys know, hey, you're our leaders. You're going to be our stars.
And I love this kind of two philosophy approach that you just talked about there, Coach. You like just thinking of the idea of selecting your starters more at the general level. Which of those approaches do you typically prefer, or have you used both in your history as a coach?
It does have to do, Stanley's right. It has to do with where you are on the program. If the program had a great year and is successful, man, it's easy to say, hey, the returning guys from that great year, especially if you have a whole 5 coming back, it's just easy to say, okay, there's some stability with that. I love stability because I want our guys to feel good about it. I want them to be able to grow together. But there is something with that, if we didn't have a good year, then maybe it is possible to open things up and make it real competitive. We had our team meeting Sunday night. And I let our guys know, hey, we got a lot of talent, a lot of new talent. You still got to fight for everything that you've earned. And you're going to fight for time. You have to fight for that starting spot. But the two philosophies, they're still great success. Bobby Knight, simplicity, execution. Dean Smith, variety and change. So you got two totally different ideas of how to play that or coach this game, how the game is supposed to be played. But yet both guys were wildly successful.
How do you like what you just mentioned about Armando Bacot when there isn't as much challenge for a spot? Because I think even in you and I both teach at Christian colleges, and so from a biblical standpoint, I think about this idea of iron sharpens iron, which we talk about just from like growing as a person. But I think the same principle is often true in the athletic world. So in a situation like Armando's, where there's really nobody to challenge him for starting at the 5. How does he not become what I'll call fat and happy? You know what I'm saying? Like, how does he keep pushing?
Well, the thing about Armando at his level is they can look towards next year, next 5 years, next 10 years. So he's going to want to make some money, and he'd love to stay and play in the NBA. I know one of the things they talked about at camp this summer was bringing Tyler Zeller in on a regular basis. He came 3 nights to play pickup, and then the alumni game the next day, I'm looking forward to watching Tyler play, and he didn't come. So then he shows up the next night. I'm like, hey, where were you? He says, I was worn out from the 3 nights playing against Armando every night. I didn't want to play in the alumni game the next day. But I think those are the ideas where you can motivate him thinking about what level do you want to play once you get here. If you want to play at the NBA, you want to play at the highest levels in Europe, making the best money, you're going to have to come every day. And it's just a different focus. It's not about that starting. It's not even about how many points you're going to score, rebounds you get. It's where you want to be in a year from now.
Man, interesting. I feel like in that last round of like kind of practice clips that came out through the social media, I feel like I saw Big Z in some of those running with the team, and so that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I mean, gosh, that's a great experience for Mondo going up against a former ACC Player of the Year. Not too shabby to have to go against, but yeah, for Tyler, he doesn't have quite as much meat on the bones as Big Mondo, so that's I'm sure he was indeed tired. Coach, let me ask you about this when it comes to starting lineups. And as you said, I love that point about it's ultimately not about the first 5. It's about, the last 5 or who it is getting starter level minutes throughout the course of a game. But as you also said, there is just something to being able to say, like, I'm a starter at the University of North Carolina or Milligan University or wherever it is. In terms of like your approach to how you start off a game, do you typically is it like set it and forget it? Or are you and your coaching staff working like, hey, we're going to tinker throughout the year to find the best starting combination to put us off on the right foot?
I think you're always tinkering. We're always trying to find the best group that plays together. When we have open gyms, we let, obviously we can't be there, but we let the guys know that, hey, this is the group that we want to play with today. And so we're matching up different, and then we find out later how the games went, who was successful, who likes playing with who played well together, who didn't play well together. So that's part of it, and we see that early in practice, and we'll do the same thing when we don't have a first, second, third team to start the year. We put lineups together, we let them play, we let them practice together, and see how that goes. How they all mesh. My best teams have been teams where we can be consistent. And I'll tell you, one of the things we've had problems with is if you have 2 alpha males, 2 of your best players. And years ago, I had 2 great players, but they both had that type A personality. When we put them on separate teams, they would fight to prove who was the best guy. They played great together, but they were terrible in practice playing against each other because they're constantly trying to prove who was the guy. So you've got to be able to pick and choose and kind of see those things and find out what's the best for the whole picture.
Interesting. And that'll be something interesting to come back around on in our next segment as we get into talking about the specifics of who Carolina might go with this year, of like, can the new guys coming in, whether it's the transfers or maybe the sophomore returners, can they kind of understand and see, hey, as you were talking about, Coach, RJ and Armando, those are the dudes coming back while still being spaces, as I remember you were talking about last week, for like somebody like Cormac Ryan to take a very vocal leadership role. So I'm really curious to have more on that conversation. Here's one other starting lineup question I want to ask you, like on kind of that general philosophy standpoint. Is it in your, and I'm just asking your opinion, more about like, we're going to get our five. And as you said, the best teams have that consistency going throughout. Is there any, like, as you put together a scout for an opponent, are you looking at, oh boy, we might need to change our starting lineup to match what they're doing with this? Or do you prefer to say, listen, Milligan University is about to do what we're about to do, and our opponent is going to have to match us?
Yeah, most times we're focused on us first. And if we do what we're supposed to do, it may not really matter what the other team does. We're taking care of our business. Now, there may be a team in our league, again, where NAI, not a whole lot of big 7-footers in our league. We may see somebody who's got 4 guards. And when I mean 4 guards, they may play 6'3" and under at the 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. We may try to match up a little bit if teams really trying to play super fast. But I'll be honest, our guys now, we've got 6'6" guys who can run like this 6-foot guys. So it's not, we would still want them to, and there's going to be a mismatch somewhere. And we're going to take advantage of it in the best way we see fit.
Okay. Make them play. That feels very Dean Smith, very Roy Williams, and a lot of what those gentlemen had always talked about. I love this great conversation around starting lineup construction. The philosophy of it is super great, but everyone's here to talk about, let's get practical with this thing. How does Coach Davis apply all of that philosophy specifically to this upcoming season? What are some of the potential combinations that the 23-24 Tar Heels might roll out and tinker with, as we were just talking about? We're going to have that conversation in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked Tar Heels is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part has to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head on over to eBay Motors. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage, and then you look for the green check mark to know that the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you're going to be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get those right parts with the right fit at the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. Want to let you all know that the 2-part Ultimate College Football Preview is live right now on Locked On ACC. It's available on YouTube and anywhere else you get your podcasts, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, once again, we're joined on Locked On Tar Heels today by Coach Bill Robinson, head coach at Milligan University. And we're talking today about starting lineups, kind of spurred on by a listener question from Stanley Daniel. Stanley, once again, thanks for your question. So, Coach Rob, we've already talked about it some in the first segment, that it seems like pretty much guaranteed we're going to see RJ Davis and Armando Bacot in that starting lineup, assuming no injuries. Goodness gracious, we hope for that. RJ, we were just talking about this on yesterday's show. RJ Davis has literally never missed a game in his Carolina career. I think I've just jinxed him, so I'll knock on wood right now. But Coach Rob, if you're in Hubert Davis's shoes, how would you be approaching this? How would you go about filling out those final 3 spots in the starting lineup?
I think it all comes down to how practice goes, how the workouts go. And again, we go back to the bank. Who's been playing well, who has not been playing well? And that can change. You get somebody like Cormac who just shoots the ball just incredibly. And he gets hot. He's got to be on the floor. He's got to be starting. And in my mind, he's penciled in at the 3 right now. One of the cool things about camp is being able to see those guys play at night. They actually had a lineup one night of Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis and Seth Trimble playing together. And it was amazing because it's just the speed of the game. And I mean, that's a lineup you're sitting there going, goodness, you could put Cormac at the 4. You could, put, Harrison Ingram at the 4. There's a lot of different, put Zayden High in there and just go full high energy, length and speed and quickness. And oh my goodness, the matchup, I mean, the lineups could be just crazy depending on what they want to do with it. There's not really a scenario to have a huge lineup, in my opinion. But those quick, long, athletic, really fast lineups, man, it could be a lot of fun to see what they do. I think especially at the defensive end. But, I mean, those are some of the possibilities I would love to see.
I feel like there's been a lot of conversation about that switch from the Roy Williams traditional 2 big lineups that we were used to seeing under Coach Williams to now, not Davis, but basketball as a whole is kind of moving towards a little bit more small ball lineups with consistency. I call it like that. I love that 3-guard lineup you just talked about. And I feel like sometimes we saw that last year with Caleb, RJ, Seth, and even DeMarco Dunn. Like I feel like we had all 4 of them sometimes last year. I call that 3-guard lineup the 3G lineup. Do you think it makes some sense to have that, whether it's like maybe an Elliot and RJ and then either Cormac or Seth essentially at the 3? Does that make some sense to you? Or do you think that's a lineup that would get abused defensively too much?
I actually don't think it's going to get abused too much as long as they're active and defensive, and how they defend pick and rolls is going to change. I think they have to have multiple ways of how to defend it. That would be a great lineup to jump it, to double it and really just attack it and just let guys fly all over the gym trying to get in passing lanes. So it's a lot of different opportunities for those guys to be able to get playing time, even if it's a 3-minute run or a 4-minute run. It doesn't have to be anything that's extended. But then when there is success with one of those lineups, you can let them ride it. Just let them ride until the next media timeout or until it's not successful anymore.
Yeah.
But it just gives a lot of opportunity for those guys to get some run and play multiple guys like we all want to happen.
Right. And man, it's so hard now with the 20-game ACC slate. You don't get as many of those bye games, and so there's not as many opportunities to tinker and try, because all of these, even the non-conference games, you're trying to get quad 1 victories to try to beef up that resume. And so it's harder to tinker with all that now. And so that'll be something more interesting to watch as well. Coach, from what you've seen from Jae'lyn Washington, here's something I've been a little bit curious about. Do you think he is fleet-footed enough or has enough lateral quickness to play the 4 at all? Like, could we see a lineup where, because I'm with you, I really think I expect to see more, like as a starting combo, having like Harrison at the 4, maybe Jalen Withers. But is there a scenario in which you could foresee Jae'lyn Washington starting at the 4 ever?
I do. I like him a lot. I think he's a great kid. I've enjoyed being around him. But he can bring a dimension shooting the basketball. I think, and I know Jalen Withers can shoot it. I know Harrison can shoot it. But Jalen can get hot to a point where, he could carry you for a little while. I love to see him have success early. I think that's really important for him to have in a game. I think I don't know what he's doing in practice. Obviously, I'm not there.
Sure.
But if he has success early in games and kind of gets that momentum, I could see him being a huge impact player. I think Harrison's solid. Harrison's going to do what he does. Jalen Withers just athletically, I think, just brings a whole different dimension to what they do. I'm excited about him because I think he can guard. Honestly, I think he can guard anybody. He can guard the little guys because he's so long and athletic. But he can guard and be just a pest to the big guys too. So, they've got so many pieces. It really depends on just what direction they want to go in.
I love that point, because one of the things that, assuming, as you and I talked about last week, Coach Davis really does lean into the depth that he has built this year. It feels like there's so many different ways this team could attack, with so many different lineup styles and constructions that I like you talked about. Like, let's let this 5 roll for 4 minutes, be successful, and then throw a completely different look. Like, as a coach, how does that mess with you?
It's hard to prepare. If you're playing 10 or 12 guys and you're running a lot of different things defensively, offensively, that's why I don't I don't want to say I don't worry about people scouting us, but when we run so much stuff, and I do go towards the Carolina philosophy, the Dean Smith, for variety and change. But if we're running 15 sets in a game and my guys are having a hard time remembering where they're supposed to be, how is the other guy going to remember? How are they going to be able to prepare for us? So that's why I love the variety and change, because if it's simplicity and execution, it's got to be perfect, and that's why Bobby Knight was great at, because they did it perfectly. But the variety and change gives you a lot of different options. It gives you a lot of different ways to go. And I think that's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
A lot of times last year you'd see maybe offenses where they put the three best guys. They're going to get RJ, and Caleb and Armando in a set where they're the only guys who are going to touch the ball, and then put two guys in the corner and just let them spread out. I would like to see more of that full movement and really get a chance to have all five guys touch the ball in per possession, every possession.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's going to be more offensive acumen at all five spots now. And with all due respect, let me just say the name, with all due respect to Leaky, there are just games where just the level of offensive necessity coming from that three spot just wasn't there. And I think we will get that much more consistently this year from whoever is in at the three. Coach, here's another philosophy question with all that comes to mind as we're talking. Do you ascribe more to this idea of, let me look at my personnel, and then that's going to help determine lineup and playing style that fits the best? Or, hey, here's my style of play as Coach Bill Robinson or Coach Hubert Davis, and then what five makes the most sense within that? Does that make sense, those two differences I'm asking there? Yeah,
I like to make steak and potatoes. So that's my go-to.
I'm with it. Can I come eat at your house? That sounds great.
But if I go, to the fridge and there's seafood, I got to make seafood. There's no steak, so I'm going to take whatever I have. I'm going to find out what I have before. There's philosophy stuff, there's sets I love to run, and I think they're awesome. But if it doesn't fit to the personnel that I have, it's not going to work. So I've got to take whatever ingredients I have, and I'm going to bake that cake with what I have. But I can't just make up something along the way and try to. And I know every coach is different. College, you can recruit to a certain way. And
that's right.
I mean, Jim Boeheim was a great example of that. He had the zone. He's going to, he had the tallest team in the country a few years ago, and just going to spread it out and make it really hard for you to be able to score against him. But he recruited specifically for what his philosophies and what his system is. I think you can do that at the college level, but sometimes you just get a great player, you want them there, and you just take whatever you have and make sure that they are you use their best abilities to maximize what you're trying to do.
Love it. Going to be weird not to see Coach Boeheim on the sideline this year, and it sounds like Coach Autry might be going away from that zone defense. I'm really curious to see how that turns out.
Well, it's going to be strange.
Yeah, exactly. Coach, I have posited on our show multiple times what I think would be the starting five, in game one. If I'm holding your feet to the fire, who would, if you were Coach Davis, and again, we don't know what's going on in practice right now. We don't know how things will go, but just what makes the most sense for you as you look at this roster for a starting five in game one, at least?
It's got to be RJ and Armando for sure. There's your 2 and your 5. From what I saw, depending on, again, the matchups and who you want to be, it's either Harrison Ingram or Jae'lyn Withers at the 4. I think either one of those guys, they're totally different players in my mind, but they both have huge abilities to make an impact. So it really depends. And then I got Cormac at the 3. I just think he shoots it so well. That would be, if I had to probably put Harrison right now. Okay. I think he maybe just a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more ready. But, I've and Elliot at the 1. I think Elliot will prove that he's the guy at the 1. So I've got Elliot, RJ, Cormac, Harrison, and Armando.
Okay. Love it. And it's just good to get, obviously we hear lots of people give their things, but from your coach's viewpoint, it's just great to hear all those nuances of here's why this guy and here's why not that guy and all that. Yeah. Well, folks, grab a blanket, get some hot cocoa, circle up around the fire. It is just about time for story time with Coach Rob. We'll do that in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes you're at a fork in the road and the right path just isn't clear. Whether you're just dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy can help you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life. so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who have experienced major life trauma. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, let me encourage you to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnCollege today to get 10% off your first month. Once again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnCollege. All right, I'm very excited for this. Coach Rob is in the midst of writing a book, just detailing all sorts of fun Carolina stories that he's experienced through his years of interactions with the program. And as Coach Rob and I were talking about him coming to be a more consistent contributor, he said, Isaac, I would love to just start maybe sharing a story each week that maybe folks could come around and just enjoy hearing a little tidbit of Carolina history. And I was like, Coach, I'm all in on that. I think stories are what makes the world go round. And so let me just turn it over to you. You have the floor, sir. Let's get into our first ever story time with Coach Rob.
Well, I got to do the greatest camp night ever. And that's kind of how that story is going to be titled. But in 2008, I'm working in Chapel Hill High School auxiliary gym, tiny little gym. And the very first morning, Joe Holiday walks in and says, do you know a kid named Sam Combs? He's a camper. And fortunately, I knew who he was, and I didn't know why. He's right there. Why? He said, oh, that's Dean Smith's grandson. I just came in and say hello. And I said, oh, cool. Well, Sam went on and won the free throw shooting contest for that day. And I go to the afternoon session in the Smith Center. I'm getting ready to head back to dinner, walk down the visitors tunnel and run smack in to Coach Dean Smith. So I introduced myself to him. I had never met him. Hey, Coach, my name is Billy Robinson. I got your grandson Sam in my camp this morning, and he won the free throw shooting contest. Well, he looked at me and said, yeah, I heard that, and I'm thinking about coming out and maybe watching some games tonight. And in my mind, I thought, oh, no. But I said, yeah, great. We would love to have you. That'd be awesome. So we get on the bus that night, grab my staff together and say, hey, we got Sam, Coach's grandson in our gym. He's talked about maybe coming out to watch us play tonight. Just want to give you guys a heads up. So auxiliary gym, bleachers pushed in so we can play side courts. I get 2 chairs, put them in the corner away from the bleachers, just in case he comes. Games get going. And I'm thinking in my mind, 1997, Coach retires. These kids are born in 1997. They might not even know who he is. It's going to be okay. Well, about 5 minutes into the game, the back door opens and kids just run. They're just gone. While playing, they're in the middle of the game and they run. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And I run over there and Coach Smith and his daughter have walked in. And I got all the kids back and brought them to their seats, sat them down, and then said, Coach, what do I do? I mean, they all want to meet you. And I'll be honest, I want them to meet you. He says, bring them over a couple at a time. Just don't let me get overwhelmed. So we stopped the game at one end so he can still watch his grandson play. And we walked the kids over by teams just to get a handshake or a picture, just say hello, and got everything under control. Just about got the night, kind of everybody back doing what they're supposed to be doing. And Tyler Hansbrough walks in, reigning National Player of the Year. Everybody runs to the door. Games are just, whoa, what are we doing? Stop. Walk over, hey, Tyler, we got Coach Smith here tonight. Would you mind going to the hallway? Yeah, Coach, no problem. So we, again, same thing. Stop the games, bring the kids to the hallway, let Tyler, give autographs, high fives, whatever. I walk back in the gym, and Kurt Sinnott, who played JV for Coach at Kansas, was working in the gym with me. And he looks at me and goes, hey, Bill, I hear the president's on his way. Ha, 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 ha. It wasn't 30 seconds later, Roy Williams walks in the door.
Get out. No.
And again, kids go flying. I'm like, no, stop. We're not doing this again. We stop for Coach Smith. We stop for Tyler. You're going to stay here. You're going to play games. If you want to get Coach's autograph, he'll be at the cafeteria tomorrow, but we're not stopping again. So fast forward to 2023. This summer, I'm at dinner one night, and the guy comes in, 2 guys who are working dorm staff. They're 25, 26 years old. One guy sits down to my right. The other guy sits across. He's an ATC, one of the trainers for the camp, and introduced myself. And we just have dinner. No big deal. So getting ready to go to my session, one of the guys stops me and says, "Hey, I saw you had dinner with Sam tonight." I said, "Yeah, he just came and sat next to me. He's just working dorm staff or something. He's just a camper." He goes, "Well, he's Coach Smith's grandson." I said, "Oh, no, I didn't know that. Cool. That's really awesome." Well, we go to the coaches party that night, and we have to get a wristband because you're going into a restaurant that's open for everybody, public. And if you have a wristband, then the waitresses know that you're with your wings and your sweet tea are on the camp. Camp's going to pay for that, not me. So I walk in to get and Sam's the one who's giving out the wristband. So he gives it to me, and great thanks. And then I had brought a copy of what I had written for the book to a buddy of mine. He read it and was giving it back to me. It was the last night of camp, and he gave it to me. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, that's Sam. Oh, wait a second. That's Coach's grandson. So I went back to him and said, "Hey, I got a book here, and I got a whole chapter on your grandfather. Here's, Dean Smith's got a whole chapter. You might be able to answer." He said, "Oh, thanks." He sat it down. And I went back and sat down, was eating wings with a couple of my guys, and then thought, wait a second, that's 11-year-old Sam Combs from 2008. That's him, all grown up. So I went over to him and said, "Hey, Sam, there's a story in here about you. You need to see this." And then I went outside. I said, "I got to go call my wife." Went out and called Barb, and I said, "You'll never believe this." Well, I walked back in, and Sam's waiting for me. He goes, "I remember that night. I remember that night." But it was like a full circle moment. The whole thing was but that's the craziest camp story I have. It's just a wonderful experience to be able to be around those guys, and then reconnect with Sam was pretty awesome.
Woo, Coach. Okay, I'm collecting myself. That is a story right there. I love who's next? The president. It's just too good. Love the full circle moment. And man, that is a great way to kick off our first ever story time with Coach Rob. Thank you so much, and look forward to hearing what you have to share with us every time you're on. It's great stuff. Folks, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. What a great way to end. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch of the day. You everydayers, man, it was a treat today. If you're a guest or new to the show, welcome in. You came at a good time. Make sure you keep coming back and become part of this community as well. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. Follow Coach at Coach Rob Buffs, or follow me at Isaac Schade. You can email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Would love to hear your thoughts, comments. Heck, maybe you got some stories to share with us too. Don't forget to subscribe on video and audio platforms. Smash the like button to let us know you're here. Leave your comments on today's show. Coach and I want to thank you again and remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk with you again on tomorrow's show, but until then, peace.